Coming up on today's show, now that the government's one-in, one-out deal with France for removing migrants is underway, will it actually deter people from crossing the channel in small boats? And are 20-mile-an-hour speed limits a good thing or overly restrictive? And the scheme to build affordable housing in our villages and rural areas, it's targeted at local people who would otherwise struggle to stay in their home area.
This connection, keeping the village alive, not completely occupied by old fogies like me, is really important. But nobody young, or very few young people, can afford to move here. This is getting some vitality back into our society.
All that coming up. First, let's meet the three politicians here for today's show. Anneliese Dodds is the Labour MP for Oxford East and former Development Minister. And Paul Holmes, the Conservative MP for Hamble Valley. And Vicky Slade, Liberal Democrat MP for Mid Dorset and North Poole. Both speak for their respective parties on housing and local government. Welcome all of you. After a bit of a hiccup at the start of the week, the government finally managed to get its one-in, one-out deal with France off the ground. Currently standing at 2 out, none in, as we've sent 2 small boat migrants back to France, and we're waiting for the reciprocal asylum seekers with links to the UK. So is this actually going to deter small boat crossings? Is it helping smash the people smuggling gangs? Anneliese Dodds, just the numbers at the moment. Are we going to see a lot more?
Well, obviously, we are seeing already this scheme working, and it is designed to have that deterrent effect. It's a really serious approach. It's not a gimmick like what we had before. It's a serious approach. We said that we would deliver deals with other countries. That deal with France, of course, was agreed in August, just last month, and we're already seeing it working. But that's just part of the answer. There's a lot else that has changed.
Are we going to see
with Labour and government?
Are we going to see thousands of people on flights back to France? 21,000 have come across the channel. Maybe, say, half, 2/3 of them get granted asylum. You're talking about a lot of flights, people on airline tickets, aren't you?
Well, I'm not going to give you a running commentary on the exact number of people who are going
do
to
the
come
commentary.
through
It's
this programme.
Two have gone back. How many are we going to get?
I can tell you some really important figures that we've had just over recent months. We've already seen asylum processing sped up by 3 times under Labour. We've seen over 5,000 foreign criminals having been deported. There's been a big change in how the system's working under Labour. We said that we were going to have a serious approach to this, to smash those gangs, to stop people being exploited so they're not making those dangerous journeys. And this French deal is a key part of that. It's so different to what we saw with the Rwanda scheme, which was just a gimmick and did not deliver.
Oh, right. Is this just a gimmick? Is it a different deterrent?
It is a gimmick because we've only seen 2 people leave the country, and Anneliese says that the Rwanda scheme was a gimmick. That was about to be established and it was being cut by the government. If this was a true deterrent, the number of people coming across on small boats would reduce, as they started to when the last government announced the Rwanda scheme. 2 people out of the country under this one-in, one-out deal is a shameful deal that's been done. But
it's the principle, isn't it? Established through the courts that they are legally on the way back. Nobody went back. Nobody went to Rwanda at all.
No, they didn't, because the scheme hadn't been established yet. And we had the same problem that the government is now going through, where the courts are interfering on who should be deported out of this country.
So that's not true. 4 people went back under the Rwanda scheme, but they were volunteers.
Yeah,
that shows how well that scheme worked. It was not effective. It was not deterring people.
Can't say...
It was not a proper long-term serious approach, and that's what this government has put in.
When the last government announced the Rwanda scheme, the number of people coming over on small boats reduced. As soon as this Labour government came into office and announced that the Rwanda scheme was being scrapped, those numbers shot up through the roof, and only 2 people have been deported under this scheme announced by the former Home Secretary.
But it's only just started.
And you're telling me you're not going to do a running commentary. We need to know, are there going to be thousands going or not? Do you think it'll work? Vicky Slade for the Liberal Democrats.
I think it's one part of a big jigsaw. But fundamentally, if the government don't start processing more quickly, and Anneliese is right, they have done that, the Conservatives shamefully failed to keep up with that, you've got to process people quickly. That's the best deterrent, knowing that if you come here, you're either going to be processed or got rid of, then that's the answer. But that's really not happened for a matter of years.
Is it the answer? Do you think it is? I mean, you thought Rwanda would be a deterrent. Are you saying this isn't enough of a deterrent, or a different deterrent
I don't
might
think
work?
it's a deterrent at all, because the government have announced that we'll take one in, we'll hand one back, and that so far it's not worked. So why would anyone that's in this country illegally think that this is a deterrent? When we announced Rwanda, the numbers were coming down. What I will say about the Lib Dem approach, though, I think the leader of the Lib Dem said that they wanted people to be able to claim benefits when they were here and work.
Well, to work.
No,
yes.
to work.
But
not to claim benefits.
that won't be a deterrent either. If you come to this country illegally, you should be deported and not allowed to work. That was our approach in government. Unfortunately, this government scrapped that scheme, and numbers have
That's
gone
just
through the
welcoming
roof.
people, isn't it? Saying, you know, while we're deciding, you can get yourself a job.
No, I don't think so at all, because the whole principle is you should be processed quickly, but if the processing takes longer, why should the local population be having to fund you during that period of time? Actually, work for your keep.
Well, okay.
Work for your keep so that the local population isn't funded, and you've also got the money then, if you are approved to stay, to actually start yourself off and, you know, get your rental
We'll
going.
come back for you, the commentary, once we see how it's going, and the smashing the gangs bit as well. Now, the Lib Dem conference is underway in Bournemouth, so it's time for Vicky Slade to wrangle our Party Animals feature, which is where we've asked the voters to tell us which animal the Lib Dem reminds them of and why.
I think they'd be a bear because they're all puffed out and think they can do everything and a bit of growling, you know, at people, but I don't like that way to it.
Probably a pussycat, because they don't follow through on what they say they're going to do, that's all.
A dinosaur. Why a dinosaur? Because they're like Tyrannosaurus Rex, just wreck everything.
Put down a Labrador. They're friendly, they're not very vicious.
A fruit fly, because they're useless, no good to anybody.
A monkey. They stretch out for food and take everything for free.
A lion, because they're fearless. They get the job done when they need to.
I'll go for a tortoise, because they're a bit slow. Well, they're behind everyone, aren't they?
Dolphin, because they're quite smart.
Well, they might be a meerkat, because they're so adaptable.
Hyena, I think. They can be vicious, but I think they can also be a bit sneaky.
Badger, because they're sort of like nocturnal, you never really see them about.
We see a lot more Lib Dems in the south of England nowadays, don't we? Didn't you have something to do with bees?
Yes.
Yeah. Would you like to be a bee? Would you like to be
I
seen
think
as
that's pretty
stingy,
good. We're
yellow?
pretty busy. We're yellow. We work together. We form a family, and there's a lot of really good queen bees. There's a lot of good female Lib Dem MPs.
What's your bee collection?
My husband keeps bees.
Keeps them, all right.
Yeah.
So we'll get some honey from you later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. In the meantime, earlier in the week, I caught up with the Lib Dems leader, Sir Ed Davey. He was talking up the party's prospects.
What I'm really excited about, though, is how Liberal Democrats are doing really well in local government. There's some fights ahead of us, mainly with reform, actually, increasingly across the south, as the Conservative Party is increasingly weak. It's only the Liberal Democrats that can stand up to reform, and we're really up for that, because we're the real party of patriotic change.
The real patriotic party. The Conservatives are weak, Paul Holmes.
No, and if you look at my area, I serve 2 councils. I see the record of the Liberal Democrats in local government. £700 million worth of debt, thousands of pounds worth of month of interest rates and services being cut in Lib Dem Eastleigh, whereas in Fareham, low council tax, very good efficient public services and council services. That's the Lib Dem action on the ground. Ed Davey should be slightly more honest to the people that he wants to vote for him.
Well, he's talking about reform, and reform seems that Keir Starmer thinks it's the main enemy, doesn't it, at the moment?
Well, actually, I think here what's most important is what politicians actually do. I would agree, rather than just what they say. And actually, recently, we've seen the kind of coalition back together again between the Conservatives and Lib Dems, because, of course, they've both been against improving people's working rights. They were both in the same camp, wanting to water down protections for people working on 0 hours contracts. So I think that does indicate a division in British politics. You know, are parties on the side of working people? Are they prepared to take those big decisions to improve people's living conditions or not?
Working people They think reform's on their side.
I'll tell you who isn't on the working people's side, and that's the Labour Party, who've put their taxes up through the roof. And actually, this legislation that, yes, both the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives have voted against, put unsustainable bureaucracy on people that want to employ people in this country. That's the fundamental difference.
I don't think anyone who's ever been on a zero-hour contract would say that, I have to say.
Some people want to be on a zero-hour contract.
Yes, and they'd be able to choose whether to stay on one in the legislation that both of you opposed, but people who are forced to stay on one, who've got no choice over it, who are on them for months, for even years, always working the same hours but never having security, they would have been given it by the measures that you both were against.
But Vicky Slate, you voted against it. Are you in with the Conservatives or are you in with your friends in Labour?
Well, I think we have our own place in the space of politics. And now one of the things that I do agree with Paul on is the jobs tax. It's really difficult for employers right now as well. So that balance between employment rights and employers' rights, you need to make sure an employer is thriving so they can give good working conditions. And then right now, employers, particularly in things like hospitality, are being hammered time after time, and that is proving really difficult to get economic growth, which I know is what the Labour government wants.
Both these parties, whether it's with the employer or the employee, are actually have had to find real solutions in government. You were OK in coalition, but you can say, oh, we've got to be on both people's sides at the same time. In all sorts of places you can say that, can't you?
Well, absolutely, we can at the moment, but we have a perfectly good costed manifesto of things that we would do that are different. There are things that we would spend money on. There are, the houses that we would build and the taxes that we would change. So the gambling companies that are, undertaxed, the big banks that are undertaxed.
Where do Liberal Democrats stand up and say, we've got to be honest with you, these are tough choices. If we were in government, we would have to do something unpopular in the way that the main parties have had to do?
I think you'll see that's happening in local government all the time, where we are leading a lot of councils, where we are having to tell the truth about how difficult things have become over the years. Right. Of course, we've not had that opportunity at the moment, but they're nor of reform.
They're attracting the support. The British public are just rejecting people who've given them difficult situations and taken tough choices and saying, well, let's just try someone else. Would you agree? It must be a very different atmosphere for you in government than when you were in opposition.
Well, I'm very pleased that we can actually try and fix those problems, fix the foundations, as you were saying.
And it will make you unpopular.
Well, sometimes you have to...
We don't like it.
Well, you have to take the right decisions, but you have to take decisions in relation to the economy that are good for workers and for business. And, there are going to be people watching this who, for example, have been on a zero-hours contract for years, who want to be able to have a more stable income, want to be able to have a mortgage, for example, want to be able to plan their lives, and they can't. And you've got parties who are trying to dress this up as something else. Yeah. It's not. Really, we need to be building back people's living standards.
You'd have to be doing this in government,
I'm not. We did, and I understand where the Labour Party has to make decisions, but they've made the wrong decisions. Because you can talk about fixing the economy, but my constituency relies on hospitality, as Vicky said. And people are laying off people because they cannot afford to take people on. That means venues close and our high streets close and our villages and our town centres decline. That is a decision that the Chancellor made to put taxes on small businesses, and people out there are genuinely suffering. That's not fixing the economy.
Yeah, righto, thank you. Still to come on today's Politics South. As more councils are imposing tighter speed limits in our towns and cities, is 20 really plenty, or is it far too restrictive? Now, we often talk about the need for more housing, particularly social homes, but outside of the South's towns and cities, the need is particularly acute. The shortage of affordable housing in rural England is estimated at 1.5 times more than it is in urban areas. It means people who are born or work in the countryside often can't afford to live there. So what can be done to increase the number of smaller homes for rent or shared ownership in the countryside without losing too much of our green space? Our Hampshire reporter Emily Hudson has been to find out about one scheme trying to do just that.
The houses are built, just the gardens to finish. In a month, people will start to move into these affordable homes in the village of Curdridge.
One of the problems is that virtually nobody in Curdridge could afford to buy their own house now. and that means that any family members who want to stay close to the family are really locked out.
This development of 8 affordable homes near Winchester is on a rural exception site. That's farmland or green space inside or on the edge of a village which wouldn't normally be allowed for development. But it is permitted to be used for social housing for villagers who need it.
We're mainly talking about people with a connection to the village, people who've grown up here, whose parents live here, whose parents may be getting to the point where they need support, somebody close by, and those are surprisingly numerous people.
The idea of small-scale building in villages isn't new. In fact, the New Forest was the first to trial rural exception sites in the late 1980s. Anne and her husband were allocated one of these bungalows in Minstead 3 years ago because they had connections to the village. She says it was amazing.
Delighted, and yeah, just settled in straight away because obviously it was coming home. Local to our family, which helps big time for support. These these housing associations that are doing it are vital. I think everybody you speak to, like there's another one in Bewley of these, and different. Everybody praises them. So yeah, essential.
But there's not enough of this kind of housing to meet the need. A recent report from those involved in rural housing found in urban areas 17% of homes were considered affordable. In the countryside, that was 9%. And it could mean people in villages waiting up to 93 years for a social home. So why are there not more rural exception sites? Action Hampshire works with communities to find sites like this one in Curdridge, but says sometimes there are local objections.
As soon as people hear affordable housing coming into a village, I think there is a huge misconception. People think there's going to be a big estate coming in. It's going to be lots of people who are not connected to the community in any way, who perhaps don't fit in with that community. And it's not going to be great housing. It's potentially going to be, quite shoddy, not great quality. And actually, all of those are not the case with the type of housing that Action Hampshire are looking to bring about.
These homes are being built by Hastow, a non-profit housing association. Homes England give grants for these smaller scale developments of social housing to make them financially viable. But there are other obstacles.
Planning can be challenging, and it's one of the things which presents a real difficulty for us in some areas, and that can be for a variety of reasons. It's not a Winchester problem, it seems to be a national problem. We should be able to plan financially and in terms of what we're going to deliver in our new build programmes. It can be very difficult when the length of time it takes to get to that stage is so unpredictable.
But the biggest hurdle to overcome is the lack of space on offer. Landowners who put forward sites for development are typically paid no more than £10,000 per plot, way below market value.
We may well identify that there's a housing need in an area, and we're willing to support the community to deliver that, but finding the land can be a whole nother challenge.
So what you need is a landowner with a passion for their community. Here that's Rob Medway, who inherited this former pick-your-own raspberry field. He's donated the space without payment, but is being allowed to build a house here, potentially for one of his children.
It isn't much of a loss, it's only an acre or so, but the value to this community, the cricket club, the school, all these little communities that are because people can't afford to live here anymore, not young people, so therefore it's an elderly, retired, rich community, but they're missing so much with these young families, and my experience in 2 other villages where I've seen it happen, it's been such a powerful impetus, a kickstart to the community, and a great blessing. So that's why I think it's so worthwhile.
Ultimately, that's the biggest selling point. For people who live in a village, it's keeping their community alive.
It's very rewarding for somebody in that position to be able to let that land go, to then see a community evolve there and help keep the village going. If you've got a long history in the village, that's really important.
What do we think about that idea, Vicky? It seems generous, but it's self-help, isn't it? That's the important bit.
It's a really great scheme, and I'd like to think that there are other landowners out there that are willing to give up a little bit of their land to benefit. But there's some really great organisations. I mean, we've got a Good Alms House Association where I am, who are trying to look for those small plots of land, because they can really target the people who live in that village, who perhaps got National Trust, they work for the National Trust, they've retired from the National Trust, they want to stay where they lived and worked, where the rest of their family are. So I think if you can bring those alms houses, those small housing associations, those landowners together, there's a real opportunity to maintain the life of a village, because there's nothing worse than seeing a village that's got no young people in it, because its future is just doomed.
You often hear the objections to planning are on more agricultural green sites, and then it all ends up in the city, but it's a balance, isn't it? I mean, you can see that the problems are worse in many cases for people living in rural areas.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is a balance, and obviously I represent an urban area in Oxford. We have extreme housing need, unfortunately, in my city, and I think often what's needed is that collaboration between a council, house builders as well, obviously in that case the landowner too, really coming together to say, look, what does this community need? And actually just this week I was at a site where we're building new homes. They're 50% social homes, 50% shared ownership homes. That is working. It stacks up financially, and it's going to make a huge difference for the families who can move in. Of course, that's being supported nationally now as well, with the big £2 billion boost that's gone into social and genuinely affordable housing at the last budget.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, we've got to build more. Prices, do they need to come down? They need to stop going up, don't they?
No, we just need to make it easier to build. I mean, that's in my constituency in Curdridge, and that local parish council have made a decision to have those sites open to local people, and that's absolutely
and
right.
make them affordable.
And make them affordable.
But then someone could sell that on at a later date.
Well, they can, but I think
the same price as all the
that
others.
would be unlikely. But what my big concern is, and I know that Vicky's been working on this too in her party, is that if you look at Curdridge, that was an example of a parish council and councils making decisions about where they want to put housing. Unfortunately, the planning and infrastructure bill that's gone through will see local planning decisions taken out of the role of local councillors, and there have been housing targets put in that actually favour the big developers, because only they will be the only ones that are able to afford the rural housing out there.
Centralising planning does sort of work against these local self-help ideas.
Well, actually, a lot that's in that bill is going to be supporting greater expertise being brought into these kind of decisions, which is really, really important, joining it up properly and delivering the homes that people need.
Greater
and that, for me, is really important.
Overruling people's local opinions, doesn't it?
Absolutely taking it away from
It doesn't mean that. And actually, when you look at the detail of the bill,
sorry,
you can see how this is a step change. Well, we just heard...
Telling a planner... Sorry, OK, tell me.
We just saw in your video, actually, one of the people who's committed to delivering these homes saying that the planning system currently wasn't working to deliver them. Labour's gripped onto that. Again, one of those issues, fixing the foundations.
It was a local
delivering with
this.
this.
Of a neighbourhood plan delivered by a parish council. Under this government, that funding's been taken away. And actually, those decisions are going to be made by bigger councils that this government are forcing through. So that won't happen in future.
It's just like Vicky make her point. Then we'll come back to you.
So in Dorset, I was talking to the chief executive this morning, and there is no shortage of planning permissions being given in places like Dorset. Delivery is a different matter, and that's out of the hands of the councils. But one thing where I think certainly Annalise and I both agree, and I don't know Paul's view, is things like holiday homes in our rural areas. You know, in too many of these villages, there are homes being either let out on short terms. You know, we need to do something about making sure that people are living in these homes and not just locking them up and using them for a few weeks a year and not paying their fair share in the council tax. And I know Annalise had put something forward around those as well.
Annalise, before you reply to that, do you honestly believe you put in the protections to stop planning becoming centralised and out of touch with local areas?
Yes, absolutely. I genuinely believe that. Within the bill, it ensures that there is that connection with local areas. Some of it is a bit technical, so I'm not going to go into all of the detail now, but it is going to ensure that those local needs are heard. And I have to say, there are voices that we often don't hear when it comes to planning. We often don't hear the voices of the kind of families that we just saw in your video, people who really need access to that housing, who want to be able to stay in the community that they grew up in, but are priced out of it. It's really important that they're heard in that planning system.
For them.
And just very, very quickly, the new policies that have gone in to support first-time buyers. I think that's really going to help with that issue about not having homes immediately being sold off for those who just want them as a second home. So there is a lot of change that we need to put into practice, so we've got communities that people actually want to live in that function properly.
Can you come back with a running commentary on housing as well at some stage? Thank you very much. It's so important for people, isn't it? Yeah. Dorset Council announced this week that it was rolling out 20-mile-an-hour speed limits to 5 new areas. They're becoming an increasing feature of many of our towns and cities, particularly residential areas, where they are seen as making the streets safer, more pleasant to live in and lowering emissions. But they're often not popular with motorists. What do you reckon, Paul? Plenty or not?
I think where it works, and actually it should be down to local councils. And the Secretary of State, former Secretary of State for this government in transport, said that that still should be the case. I believe that local people know their local area, and if people are asking for a reduction in the speed limit, then that should happen. I do
Nobody's
feel sorry.
going to ask to have it raised, are they? If you know, I want faster traffic past my gate.
Well, no, actually, we do have some areas in my patch where they'd like it put up, but that's very rare, I grant you, Peter. But look, it's for local councillors and for local people to say if they want a reduction, and I think that's perfectly sensible.
Annalise, are you the motorist friend or not in Oxford?
I'm the motorist friend, I'm also the walker's friend, the cyclist friend, the person using buses friend. I mean, I think you may well find violent agreement on this subject actually here.
Yeah.
I mean, I think local people do have to be really driving these processes. That's one of the reasons why, without going into the weeds on this, I'm so fed up with what's happening in Oxford, because we've got the county determining what should be happening on transport in my city and not local people. And I think that's a problem. But it really should be at a local level we take these decisions.
Well, we've got devolution coming as well. You're on the bill for that.
So, I mean,
Vicky.
this is happening in Dorset, and in each of these cases, it's the parish council, it's the local people who have actually made this happen. So it's happening where people want it, and that's where those decisions should be taken.
But who is going to speak up for the motorist in this scenario?
But the motorist, I mean, the motorist is the same person who's also walking their children to school and, you know, riding their bike to the local shop. So the motorist is the same person as the person who's living in that village. And I think if it's going through a village and you're speeding through a village, and with the greatest respect, I don't think the person speeding through the village should have the same rights as the person who's living there.
And outside schools as well, those are important.
Door.
Certainly in cities like Oxford, that's been working, hasn't it? And I mean, maybe just to stick up, just at the end, briefly, the low traffic neighbourhoods are enabling people to use their streets a lot more, aren't they?
They are, but this is again where local involvement is so important, because we don't have the alternatives to the car in Oxford that you have in a city like London, for example. We don't have a brilliant bus system, light rail, underground, all that kind of thing. So I said to the County Council they shouldn't introduce more of them until they'd spoken to local people, but they didn't do that. That's where I think the problems are. Politicians have got to listen, I think, on these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe centralised planning in HS2's case hasn't proved quite so well, but we'll see how local opinions work on things like speed limits. That's it for us this week. Thank you to my guests, Annalise Dodds, Paul Holmes and Vicky Slade. And next week, as the assisted dying bill continues its way through Parliament, we're going to be looking at end-of-life care, with hospices already warning that they are on the brink financially, a real lack of funding there. We'll be looking into the subject and hope we'll see you as well next week. Goodbye.